You know we're starting, right?
What? What?
Morgan. No, I'm not cutting. I'm not cutting. You're supposed to be ready. Just like in the Devil Wears Prada. Why is no one ready? Like, what's going on? We're supposed to be talking about love doesn't hurt, the healing continues. What is in your hand?
Well, okay, so what had happened was last night, because Mattis was sick, right? And we had to take him to the hospital. And so when we got home, like he was like sad. He's like, Mom, my dog. He's like, Zion got a hold of my dog. And he's like, can you fix it? So I had it over here on my desk so I could sew it. And then I was moving it out of the way so we could record. And it gets something real.
And then it's a heart shape.
I know, isn't it cute?
Why is he so sad?
Because he needs love. He just needs a hug.
You know, this to me is perfect. You know, y'all think we plan this stuff. When I tell you how I catch Morgan, I just hit the record button and see what's going. Listen, welcome to Getting to After. My name is Chatone Morrison. I am the Princess of Positivity. And that nut over there, that's Morganne Bustos, my ride or die. How you doing, girl? I know how the dog's doing, not too well.
He was sad. He just needed a hug and some love. No, I'm doing great, honey. I'm doing great.
I'm glad. I know that your son is doing better. I'm really happy to hear that. You know, everyone, we come out here every Monday morning because we want to share with you different strategies about getting to after. That's an empowerment space. It's no matter what's going on in your life as a midlife woman, ways to empower yourself to do better, ways to keep it moving as a mama, right? Because it's something that we desperately need. And we always want to be that safe space for you. I show up here with Morgan because not only does she make me laugh, all right, she's like my daughter. She's not my daughter, but that's what it feels like. And these last 4 weeks, we've been doing this series called Love Doesn't Hurt. If you've missed that, definitely go back, check it out. We have a whole playlist. What have we talked about, Morgan? We covered a lot of things.
Oh, girl, we've talked about a lot of good stuff, like the meat and potatoes of what self-love looks like,
Yeah.
recognizing, I think it was red flags in relationships.
Oh, the family one. Yeah. So the second week we talked about narcissism and unhealthy people in your family and how to protect yourself from that. Yep.
Yeah. And then the other one that I really appreciated, that was when I was super sick. You did the one on caregiving when it becomes like way too much for us because we do it out of love. But then sometimes when we're not taking care of ourselves, it can become more of a burden. Give up. Yeah. And then the last one I think we did was the toxicity within the family dynamics.
Oh, the teens.
The teens, yes.
Oh my goodness. Listen, women, if you have teens and if there happen to be any dads that pop in, I mean, shout out to the dads, but check out last week's because we're really giving you some great strategies, some grounding, tapping, centering, and ways to start the conversation, even if your children might need, your teens especially, young adults might need therapy, or how to create communication when they have to encounter those toxic people in their life. So, you know, we did good. We talked about some heavy stuff, but at the end of it, it's always about what can you do to make yourself stronger? Because what we can't do is control everybody else. We can barely control ourselves, right? But that's the only thing that we really can do. So I love this series. We've done a couple series so far. And although this one touched on domestic violence, it was really more about how can we as women nurture ourselves? How can we do that?
And it's kind of like decluttering your closet. You know, you pull everything out, you get excited about it, like spring's coming and we're decluttering everything. And at first you feel like super, super good because you're addressing all these things and you're making everything nice and neat and complete. But then all of a sudden you're like looking around.
It's like, it's a mess.
Standing in the mess and you're like, oh, it's so overwhelming. And then you're like, I'm exhausted now. Like, do I even have the energy to put all that back together? And so it's the same with our emotions. Once we start unpacking everything and trying to move and navigate through things, it can get to be a little bit much. So,
and that's where, you know, because we advocate using a lot of different modalities. We're both coaches. I do specifically core energy coaching. Morgan is becoming a specialist when it comes to helping women who have navigated through domestic violence. And we do a lot of outreach for that as well. But then also we're both moms. And I mean, you've experienced of being a mom almost 25 years almost soon, right? 25 years. That's a long time. That's like, you know, quarter of a whole century, all right, of mothering. So we try to put all that together, and it is like curing, helping others to heal in the family, helping ourselves to heal. The reason why we want to do this particular summary is to kind of talk about ways that if you've seen things over those last 4 weeks, or you're seeing things with yourself that you're like, I need to improve in these areas, or I need something to change. We don't want to just give you something for a week. We want to help you to see how can you navigate through so that you can continue to implement and continue to heal. you know, Healing, unpacking all the things that we have to unpack sometimes is very tedious, especially when you're doing it alone. I do want to put this up here. I'm going to put this link. If you're like, I kind of like am interested in tapping, like as they do this emotional freedom technique, I will tell you that it works in amazing ways. It just works. And so what happens is that if you decide to work with us, you can hit this link, you can get a session with us, and we can show you how very personal, like some of the things we do here on the podcast are general, but how on a personal level, if you've experienced some of these basically traumas, if you've had toxic relationships, if you've been even abused, that we can use tapping to help you to navigate through, process, and release the toxicity, because we all know the toxicity that stays with you, it's not cute. It's not
Mm,
cute at all.
mhm. That's right, and once you see something and you get it out, you can't unsee it. And so that's exactly what we're talking about today. What happens after you
Yeah.
realize that all these patterns are unhealthy? You
Yeah.
know, how do you continue to move forward from that point on without feeling like completely drained and overwhelmed?
Yeah. Morgan, I know there's this idea that we talked about this when we did your series back in October, that there's like overcoming silence. And I think that across the board, that's one of the things that happens. There's this need to show up. We just need to be strong. That's something that I have a struggle with. You got to be strong. You got to make things work. But yet there's like these struggles when you're trying to heal and you're trying to do it in silence. And I know that you had prepared to talk about some of those things, like when you're always thinking about how can I do it in private? How can I do it in silence? Um,
Mhm.
the struggle's still there, but there are some ways, there's some things that people need to be aware of. You want to share those?
Absolutely. So there's probably like 4 or 5 different things that came to mind, and one of them was just the grief of the situation and feeling overwhelmed by that, and letting go of the idea. Like, we all have this idea of what our life should have been,
Yeah.
what we wanted it to be. So then when that doesn't happen, we have to get to a point of letting that go, of the should
Yeah.
have, like what
Yeah.
it should have. And then there's the guilt and self-doubt, where it comes in. We talked about that in a couple of our episodes, where like when we were like, is it really as bad as I'm making it out to be? Because the abuser always downplays everything.
Yeah. That gaslighting that we've talked about a lot.
Yeah, so then you start doubting yourself and you're like, I don't even know if my reality is my reality, right?
Right.
So like I said, questioning whether or not that's bad, or am I overreacting to that? But then that rolls into the confusion.
So, okay, so you're right. So there's the guilt, there's that, and I remember you mentioning that, I think last week, where you said that idea that, you're, what you're feeling, and it's whether the person's an abuser or not. It could just be a more toxic relationship without specific abuse, but your body's telling you something.
Yeah, your
And
nervous
then
system saying that if all of this around me is not okay, I'm not okay. But then you're trying to convince yourself and the people around you that everything's okay. And so it makes you question whether or not like things are as bad as they are. But then also with that, there are those good moments that they give you, because
yeah,
they just sprinkle just breadcrumb barely
it's
in your
like,
breadcrumb. Yeah. And
yeah,
then snatch it back quicker than a hiccup.
yeah,
And it gets to the point where it's like, well, this really, really wonderful thing just happened. So should I ignore all of the rest of the vomit around me because there's this one yummy piece in the middle? And we can't do that, because we're setting ourselves and our children up to fail when we do. And so then when we get to that point where we realize how badly it's affecting our nervous system, sometimes we can shut down and pull
yeah,
ourselves away. And that's where the loneliness comes in,
yeah,
right? Is the part of healing. It's sometimes it gets messy. It
yeah,
gets really, really messy, because there's this huge shift in the relationships, like, even with your kids. Like,
yes.
like, they start bucking back because they're like, "Well, I'm not used to this version of my mom."
Oh yeah, oh
You know?
yeah, When
But
you
I'm
that's the whole thing. When your power comes back, when there's a shift in the equilibrium, and there's a shift in the balance, that's definitely gonna happen. And I think, you often mention because again, but many of our audience have had to have a more enmeshed relationship with their children just for safety.
oh, yeah.
Like it was so necessary. Then when you're in a safe space, it's like, okay, we're gonna go back to I'm the queen here. Don't
Yes.
get it twisted, right? And so then what you mean you the queen? I'm not a subject though, so it becomes tricky.
Well, and that's exactly what we had to do. All of the children, like all the youngest 3 children and I, we are extremely enmeshed. And so even to the point where if something's wrong, we each feel it
Know
differently.
each other. Yeah,
Like they can be in another part of town and we
doesn't
feel
matter.
something off, right?
Yeah.
So there's so many good books. Talking about Tone, which book was it that you gave me about having codependent personalities? It was
Oh, Melody Beatty's book on Codependent No More. That
amazing.
book, and it's an old book. There's so many books on codependency, but that's the very first one I ever read,
Yeah.
and I've given multiple copies to people. That's one of my favorites on codependency. That book is powerful.
We'll make sure we'll put that in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
description
yeah.
because that was life changing when I realized because I had it in my mind a certain way of what codependency looked like. And then when I read that, I said, "You have got to be kidding me."
Yeah.
It
People
it
think it's something else than what it is.
it's
And
it,
when I realized I was okay, this is a codependent relationship I'm in, I remember telling Big Sissy, and she's like, that's not you," because people don't understand what it actually is.
mhm,
And once you know, it's like, who cares? I think sometimes there's always this thing about these titles or diagnoses or whatever.
mm,
Who cares?
mm,
Who
mm.
cares what it's called? Who cares? I couldn't care less. Call me whatever you want to call me. Do I feel better?
Thank you. Because that's all we're trying to get to, are we not? Is
Get after.
you after all of the chaos, all of the drama, all of the sickness, all of the mental illness, all of the everything that we're struggling with and just pure exhaustion
Yeah.
because that's a part of the abuse too. You are so exhausted from keeping this facade, having
Yeah.
to live this lie all the time and hurting the people that
That's
you
exhausting.
the most about, to keep them safe and then to keep yourself and your kids safe. So then getting to a point where, you know, you just finally are in that safe place, your body and your nervous system starts to shut down in a good way because
Right.
you're safe, right? Remember how many times we've been together and I would just sleep
Yep.
and sleep and sleep because I knew my kids were taken care of
Yeah.
because I
I
finally
remember the first time when we were in Texas and that happened, and we were really scared because you
Mhm,
were like, "No, no, Imma sleep on the couch," and then you had that yellow blanket, your favorite blanket, and you kinda, like, went into a cocoon, and
mhm,
Big Sissy was like, "Is she okay?" And I'm like, "I don't know, because we had just that was our first time after 7 years first meeting, and you literally went into comfort,
mhm.
and we could not wake you.
It was like a hibernation kinda thing.
You
Like,
were
I
exhausted.
I, like, pulled my blanket over my
Mhm.
head like this, and I curled up, and I had not slept that good in Lord knows how long, because I knew I was safe for the
Until the next time you were in my house. Wait a minute. Don't you dare, because you know good and well
first time.
in November, when you slept
Yes.
for 27 hours straight, and I was like, "Is she
You're like, "Sequoia? Tap,
like,
tap, tap. Is she"
lady, is she okay?"
I remember you coming in and checking on me, and you're like, "Morgie, Morgie, honey,
"You gotta eat
it's strong, you
something."
gotta eat." Yep, "You got here, drink some tea."
Yeah,
I made some tea, eat. But that shows our body is
that's exhaustion. Yeah,
processing everything that we just went through,
yeah,
but it's in a healthy way. It's
yeah.
finally in a healthy way to examine all that, so
Well,
it's
I say that again?
it's just a learning process.
It's a learning process, but it also has to do with release. I mean, this episode is really about if you see these things in your life, right? If you know you're not taking care of yourself, if you
Mhm,
know the self-love is not on lock, if you know that you're only saying yes and you haven't created any boundaries, if
mhm,
you know that in your households or in your family group or even at your job, someone is completely taking advantage of you and you just keep saying, "There's nothing I can do about it." I can't tell you what that thing is, but I can tell you if you decide to center yourself, do breathing, and do emotional freedom technique, it will help you be clear to navigate through. And then you can figure out your answer and how you're going to execute. It's when we have no clarity
Yeah.
that we just do anything. We don't know what to do.
I loved how last week you brought up how even if you take a minute before you like when you finally get to work, after you're driving through that chaos and traffic and you get to work, taking a minute to do your breathing, doing your grounding so that you're in a good place to move forward with the rest of the day.
It's
That way,
really critical.
whew,
Yeah.
I did that just before I went to the grocery store. I
Well,
went to the
well,
grocery store.
let me tell you something. Because of the fact that I know, because I have so many major health issues, that
Mm,
that has been one of the ways that, because as soon as I go to the doctor, the pressure's off the chain and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, we need to change your medicine. We need to do this," and I'm just like, first of all, first to begin, what if you don't rush me through here? Take off your clothes, put the clothes on, put on a robe, do this, sit over here, do this. What if you allowed me to sit down for a second? But because they can't, because another podcast, the insurance situation, and they can only spend about 14 seconds with you, or else they have to bill you for a double appointment, whatever. I have to arrive early. I have to arrive early because they're not going to allow my nervous system to calm down from the traffic, from getting in the office, from the 3,000 pieces of paper I got to fill out when I've been coming here for 20 years.
yeah.
Why do I have to tell you about my mom again? My mom had that disease since the very last time I came here. So I'm not sure. Okay, let me not digress. That's a tangent that I can get on. Whatsoever, I know for myself that I'll do one of two things. One of them is my essential oils, my
Mm,
breathing, and grounding. Very, very important. I recently added the grounding part. I was always doing the essential oils and the breathing. The second one for me is literally writing, which we haven't talked about here, but one of the strategies toward taking a little step toward getting better is finding what your formula is. Your formula may not be the same as everybody else. Maybe one day maybe every single day you do centering and deep breathing, right? Another day you have to say, you know what, I'm going to do some writing. I call that write and release. That's something I do with my clients where we literally like journal for 5 minutes, put on some music, just journal out. It doesn't matter what it says
mm,
because you'll be surprised what comes out. As a writer, that is a practice that writers do. Just write and write and write, not type, just write and get it out. Kinesthetic, you get to see
mm,
it and you let your brain take over for you. And what happens is then you can throw it away, you can burn it, you can keep it, you can put it in a closet, you can put it under the chair of your car. But it's a way of releasing what's inside of you in that moment so you don't take it into the doctor's office, so you don't take it into the boardroom, so that you don't take it to your kids when you're picking them up from work, from school. These are little strategies, these are small steps so that you can start to release from some of the toxicity, whether the toxicity is coming from you because you're not taking care of yourself or whether it's coming from those around you. um, the second thing is really to think about how can you make all these things more manageable? Because we've
mm.
thrown a lot of stuff at you, right? We've talked about self love and family and toxicity and caregiving and lots of other stuff in between because, we got
It's
lots to talk about, right? But the thing is that it's impossible for us to do everything at once.
mm,
And in midlife, we start looking at how much time do I have left to fix things? How much time do I have left? And when we start rushing, we start cutting corners. What if you just did one thing?
mm,
What if you just took one step? What if you didn't look to your left or your right and just kept your eye focused and said, I'm going to concentrate on this next step. This week, I'm going to journal once a day.
mm,
This week, I'm going to practice my fat and happy practice where I just look around me and see what's amazing.
mm,
This week, I'm going to talk to my daughter. I'm just going to talk to my daughter, whatever she wants to talk about.
mm.
Um, I'm going to look at my relationships and I'm going to see how much negative talk is going on. How negative am I after being with this person?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right? Because we don't self-examine. We feel a certain way after these situations, but we never allow ourselves the time to figure out why. And what do? We take it on ourselves. It must be me.
Mhm,
Must be me. What that's called self-sabotage. Ain't no self-love and self-sabotage. Okay. So
mm,
if you take those just slow down. And I dare to tell you to slow down in 2025 when everything is a mess. But the thing is, you will not feel better unless you allow yourself that time. Um,
And
we
then
talk oh, good.
when you do allow yourself that time, it's if you're struggling with allowing yourself that time, just ask yourself, like, what would the future me appreciate
If
me
I
to
did
do
this.
right, like, just this
Yeah,
one little thing changing, like, because it can shift
yeah.
and pivot the whole movement of your
Yes,
direction.
I love that. And even that takes time. Like,
Mhm.
thinking about, like, what would it be if I did this, and what would it be when I did that? Um, we are worth it.
Mm,
You're worth it. If it's 5 minutes to arrive beforehand, and that
mm.
means you've gotta get up 15 minutes earlier, it's worth it. Does that mean you have to go to bed 15 minutes earlier? Okay, it's worth it. And I think when you start thinking about what those small steps are so that you don't get overwhelmed, okay, I gotta do this. And maybe you have all those areas. Maybe you know that you're struggling with self-love. Maybe you have toxic relationships at home. Maybe you have teenagers that you're not really connecting with. Maybe you're also a caregiver.
Yeah.
It's possible that you have all those things because you're in midlife. You in the middle of this madness of the sandwich, okay? So you
Yeah.
could be having all of that. But aren't you worth one little piece? I've watched you do this, Morgan, and sometimes much to my chagrin, because I'm like, Morgan, are you awake? Are you there? And then you just have to say, I can't.
Mm.
And I tell you the truth, the thing that I love about a person who's willing to set a boundary, there's so much self love in a boundary. And the people who won't respect it probably shouldn't be in your life.
There's
I would just say it.
there's a moment too where self-love can feel selfish.
Yeah, but it's
There
not.
there's a guilt that comes in where you're like, "Man, I feel so guilty that I'm not out of bed. I feel guilty that I'm not doing this and this and that," or laundry could be doing, or I could be helping the kids with their homework or their chores. I could be studying, or I could be cleaning, or whatever it is. But it
Yes.
is such a beautiful moment in time where you do set that boundary with yourself and say, "You know what? I'm worth
Yeah.
in just a
I'm
second."
watching.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
worth for
I'm
sure.
watching. And I think that when we reframe how we feel about that, we
Mhm.
do so much for our family. You know, you and I were talking the other week about strength. And when we talk about empowerment, what does that mean? This is not some feminist movement we have or anything.
Yeah.
We need to be strong because we face a lot of mess, just period. As a woman of color, I face all sorts of stuff more now than ever. Okay. As a single mom, you're going to face stuff. I know as a beautiful woman, you go someplace, you got to, first of all, navigate the stupidity of
Mm,
men many times.
mhm,
If you don't show up strong and ready to protect your family and be that lioness, it's going to be a struggle. But then at some point, that lioness, you got to let her sit down.
mm.
Like, the lionesses are watching the cubs and everything, but they're not fighting all the time.
Yeah.
They go for the hunt, and then they come back and they lay in a cave, right? And
Mhm.
sometimes we have to do that. It's so, so important. Um,
I like that.
I think one of the most important reframes that we can use, that reframing, is looking at other people's behavior. I mean, look at ours too. Look at yours too. We
Mhm,
are all trying to be better people, I would hope, but also say what part of this is me and what part of this is somebody else.
mm,
Because a lot of it's not going to be. And that's how, healing, what we've been talking about, the strategies, the red flags, it's going to take time. That's why we're here, because it's not going to be overnight. It's healing at our own pace. And we
mm,
all have some healing to do. I know, Morgan, you've been working with different modalities for years and years, and so have I. We don't have a choice. Okay?
mm,
There's stuff out here happening.
yeah.
And many people are afraid. They're afraid if they have to look in the face of the healing that hasn't happened, that they're going to self destruct. We're living proof that you won't.
Well, and there is even a point I remember where, like, I was getting frustrated. I'm like, "Why am I not done with this yet?" And you're like, "Morgie, it's gonna take a minute. Like, you need to heal at your own pace."
Yeah.
And that's exactly why that's what the EFT tapping transformation we're doing today is exactly that. Like, learning to heal at our own pace and that it's okay because each of us are our own person. We have our own traumas, our own life experiences, and so we can't compare ourselves to other
Yeah.
people. It's always told to
Yeah.
stay in your own lane. That also applies to your healing
Yes, it
process.
does. Yes, it does. It does.
Mm,
And I think that when you told me what you were going to tap on today, and I was like, "Ooh, that sounds very juicy." Um, the thing is that healing doesn't mean you're broken. Healing
mm,
doesn't mean you're bleeding. Healing doesn't mean any of those things. And I think that when we start talking about love not hurting, we started with self-love because so many things are allowed to happen when you don't love yourself enough. I've said this before that my very first coach slash therapist would always say this when she did motivational speaking. And she would say, like, if there was a relationship problem,
Mm.
she'd see people that were engaged or dating, and it was a mess. And she would always say that if the girl, especially the woman, loved herself a little more, she could love him a little less.
Ooh.
And if she loved him less, it would be better because the thing is, that's not to mean she doesn't love him, but if she loved herself a little more, and again, that is biblical, love your neighbor as yourself, which means that that's the basis. It's got to be there. And all the love that flows through you from there starts with you. It doesn't end with you, but it starts with us. And so I think we should get into this little tap. I would like to see you do that. You know, I love to see you tap.
Yes.
Um,
Let's
and you know,
go.
you've been doing most of our grounding recently. We're not going to do a grounding today, but I know you'll start us with some breathing or something. If you haven't tapped with us before, I recommend you try. You don't know what you're missing until you do it, and you're like, "Oh, that's what I was missing." We're
Mm.
getting so much positive feedback, so if you're tuning in with us on a Monday or you're seeing us on the replay, definitely just take a moment. Take a moment to try what it's like, and then if you want again, if you're like, "I would like to know what that's like," go ahead and grab a session so that you can see what does it feel like when it's specifically tuned just to your life, just to your situation, and realize the one to me, one of the most dynamic parts of tapping and what we create in our circles, and even if you're working with us one on one, is space.
Mm.
Space for you to know this is just for you.
Mhm.
And we all wish that was free, but it's not. It comes at a cost in 2025 to have a space be just for you where it's not about anyone else and you're able to feel that safety to talk about whatever you need to talk about. We help you to do that. Um, so you can always go to bit.ly/tap-chat and Morgan, do your thing, girl. Let me put up a banner so that people know what we're doing. Hold on. Let me give you a banner chat.
All right, sugar bone.
Here we go. All
All
right.
right, everybody, we are going to start by if you're taking off your shoes, if you have shoes on, go ahead and take them off. We really just want to get comfortable in our own skin for a minute, acknowledge everything that is around us. We're going to start with like 3 deep breaths in and deep breaths out. And we're going to be blowing out through our mouth as to the full capacity and then breathing into the same amount and then going back out. So are you ready?
Ready.
Okay, now breathe in and out and in and out and in and out. And in this last breath out, just enjoy this moment and just enjoy feeling your feet on the ground, smell the air around you, the texture on your skin, your clothes up against your skin, and really just become aware of your surroundings. And then when you're ready, I welcome you to open your eyes and we'll go ahead and start with our tapping sequence. So now we're going to start with the karate chop point. This is on the side of our hand and we're going to start with our setup statement. So are you ready to repeat after me? Okay. Even though I didn't see the hurt right away,
Even though I didn't see the hurt right away,
I deeply and completely love and accept myself.
I deeply and completely love and accept myself.
Even though I wasn't ready to acknowledge this pain before,
Even though I wasn't ready to acknowledge this pain before,
I honor my journey and I trust that I am healing the right time for me.
I honor my journey and I trust that I'm healing in the right time for me.
Even though sometimes I feel guilty or regret
Even though sometimes I feel guilt or regret
for not recognizing this sooner,
for not recognizing this sooner,
I consciously choose to forgive myself
I consciously choose to forgive myself
and allow my healing to unfold with love and patience.
to allow my healing to unfold with love and patience.
Beautiful. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to do the first round. And that is going to start at our eyebrow point. I wasn't ready to see the truth before.
I wasn't ready to see the truth before.
Side of eye. There were signs.
There were signs.
But I wasn't able to fully acknowledge them.
But I wasn't able to fully acknowledge them.
Under the eye. Maybe I was protecting myself, or maybe I just wasn't ready.
Maybe I was protecting myself, or maybe I wasn't ready.
Under your nose. And that's okay.
And that's okay.
Your chin. I can acknowledge the hurt now without any fear.
I can acknowledge the hurt now without any fear.
Your collarbone. I give myself permission to be honest about my experiences.
I give myself permission to be honest about my experiences.
Under the arm. There is no shame in not seeing it sooner.
There's no shame in not seeing it sooner.
Top of head. I am allowed to recognize my pain in my own time.
I am allowed to recognize my pain in my own time.
Eyebrow point. I forgive myself for not recognizing it sooner.
I forgive myself for not recognizing it sooner.
Side of eye. I was doing the best I could with what I knew at the time.
I was doing the best I could with what I knew at the time.
Under the eye. It is safe for me to acknowledge my past with love and not judgment.
It is safe for me to acknowledge my past with love and not judgment.
Mm-hmm. Under the nose. I am open to speaking my truth with safe and loving people.
I am open to speaking my truth with safe and loving people.
My chin. I give myself grace as I continue to heal.
I give myself grace as I continue to heal.
Collarbone. There's no rush.
There's no rush.
Healing happens in its own time.
Healing happens in its own time.
Under your arm. I choose to trust my journey step by step.
I choose to trust my journey step by step.
Top of head. I am allowed to heal at my own pace.
I'm allowed to heal at my own pace.
Beautiful. Now, this third round that we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and make this the affirmational round so we can go ahead and make that set in and stick. Okay?
Awesome.
So our eyebrow. I honor the peace of my healing.
I honor the peace of my healing.
Side of eye. I allow myself to be honest about what I've been through.
I allow myself to be honest about what I've been through.
Under my eye. I trust myself to heal gently and completely.
I trust myself to heal gently and completely.
Under the nose. I am worthy of love, care, and understanding.
I am worthy of love, care, and understanding.
Especially for myself.
Especially for myself.
Chin. I am strong enough to face my past with compassion.
I am strong enough to face my past with compassion.
Collarbone. I forgive myself for what I didn't see before.
I forgive myself for what I didn't see before.
Under the arm. I give myself permission to take my time and trust my process. I give myself permission to take my time and trust my process. Top of head. I am healing.
I am healing.
I am growing.
I am growing.
And I'm exactly where I need to be.
And I'm exactly where I need to be.
Beautiful. So let's take a moment and let's just breathe in. Shake that off because that was a lot right there. Let's just take a deep breath in. And out. Mm.
Oh, that was good.
Mm.
That's good.
I just love it. Let's take our hands and put them over our heart real quick, and let's just get that a little bit deeper. Because when you put your hands over your chest, it's like giving your nervous system a hug. It mimics a hug. And I just want to wrap my arms around you right now and let you know that I believe in you. You're safe, and that I'm healing at the right place for me. I trust my journey. I am safe, and I am free.
It's very powerful. Y'all, if you were able to do that, even that closing piece, it does make a big difference.
Mm.
These are the things that we mean by that slowing down.
Mm.
This is what we mean by self-care and self-love. It looks different for everybody. It does. Maybe you're like, tapping, that's really weird, but like you didn't try it yet.
Mm.
So it's like saying that you don't like chicken. Okay, maybe you don't like chicken, but maybe you didn't have it the way that we cook it.
Mm.
It's pretty good. I don't know anybody else's chicken, but mine's good. And I think that sometimes that we look down on things or we are confused about what something can do because it's odd or it's different. But the fact that we need healing, the fact that we need to embrace a process of release isn't strange. We all want it. And we do it in ways many times that aren't very healing and aren't very healthy. And that's not what we want. So, um, this ends our series on Love Doesn't Hurt. We just wanted to kind of do this little wrap up for you. But please revisit it. Go back and take a look at it because, again, our podcast is all about helping you feel empowered and having a safe space. We're going to talk about some things that are challenging, but then, the thing is that we're all going through something,
Mm.
right? You've heard a lot of Morgan's story, you've heard a lot of my story, and you're going to hear more as we go forward. But the thing is that many of us, I would say most of us, have some baseline that's similar. And
Mm.
so when we decide to work together, it's so much better than trying to work on your own.
Well, and that's where all the power comes from, and the stability of knowing that you've got your squad.
Yeah,
You have your unit that you can work with, and that's stable. Stability is so
beautiful. Yeah. All right, guys. So listen, we are gonna go right now and get on with our day. And so we want you to do the same, all right? Make sure that you check out on our channel on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, like, share, and all that. But in particular, if you know something that you're like, I would like them to talk about this particular topic. We do lots of research. We don't want to pretend ourselves as experts on everything because we're not, but we will bring the tapping to you that you need. We will bring the grounding and the centering to you and the coaching that you need. And if we don't have it, we'll bring the expert that you need as well, or we'll talk to those experts and we'll bring you the information. Um, we know that one small step can make a world of difference. So the homework is, what's your one step? Like, what you're going to do this week that's going to change things for you? Morgan asked that question. What's that one thing? Like, what would your future self be like? Well, girl, thank you.
right.
Right? And let's give that to her this week. Let's do it this week. All right. Well, we'll see you soon. We love you.
Bye, guys. See you next week.
Bye.